Hello everybody, I am FURYWEB, otherwise known as Scott, and it has been a while since I did my last video. Could be a year actually. Anyway, so I'm going to be doing a new series, basically Photoshop editing, starting with the very basics. This particular one is going to be the splash screen, which you're kind of looking at now, but I'll show you the splash screen in a minute, and we'll go through a process and how I created it and some of the tools I used. Again, it's only basic stuff, so please sit back and enjoy. So here we are with the first tutorial. So as you can see, I've loaded up the file we will be creating today, and it is very basic. As you can see, there's only a few layers, there's not an awful lot of layers going on. As you can see, I've named all my layers, which is definitely an important thing to do, because after you've created various layers and then you're trying to figure out what's what, it can be an absolute nightmare, especially when you start working with about 40 layers plus, which can happen many a times. So today we are going to be creating this. So I'll just quickly go through the layers on the side. So you have the background layer, you have a shadow layer and another shadow layer. You have a corner layer, splat, which is this. We have our text, and then we have text reflection, which is this nice thing here. And as you can see, they all have some sort of effects going on to them, just so you can see them all. So if you're not too sure, when you start working with effects on layers, you have this little arrow here which you can obviously hide your effects, which is always good when you've got, like I said, 40 plus layers going on. And another thing which you can do, which I thought I'd leave for now, is you can actually grab, say if you want the text and you don't want too many layers on the show, you can actually group them. So if you select all of them by just holding either shift and selecting the last one, or individually you can hold control and select each one with the left click of the mouse. And then what you can do is you press Control G and it groups it, and then double click to rename the group. So we'll just put text, and then at the side you've got the little arrow here so you can actually view what's inside that group. So it's pretty, like I said, basic. It's just remembering those kind of things, but it's just about organization. Another one is always save your work, even if you're only about 5-10 minutes into it. Photoshop has a good habit of crashing a few times, so basically it's always good to save. Right, let's go through some of the basic tools onto the left here before we actually get cracking on with this. So we have our little selection tool. So let's just say, for example, I've got this layer selected, and make sure you get your right layer. You can actually move it around. You have some guides there that'll help you out. You have the selection tool, which is like marquee, ellipse, rectangular. So basically with that, you can select areas and move them about. So say if I was on this layer and I put the marquee there and I click the move tool and move it, I actually move part of the actual graphics, which we don't want to do. The next one is another selection tool, which is lasso tool, which is a freehand tool. So you can select things freehand. So if you had a drawing tablet, it's a lot easier with that button. Have this one, which is supposed to be predictive. It's supposed to work out the shape, as you can see, but I'm not a big fan of it. It doesn't work too well for me. And then we have the polygon lasso tool, which is, as you can see, you can just click. Generally I use this an awful lot because I don't have the honor of having a graphic tablet, so when I'm cutting something out, I generally use that tool, which I can show you in another episode on how I use it. We have the next one, which is the quick selection tool and magic wand tool. So quick selection, again, it tries to work out what you're selecting, and you can actually, oops, excuse me, Yeah, so let's just go on to corner. You can see it's kind of selecting it, but it's not. So you can actually plus and minus. Plus is already on, and then you can minus other bits of the selection. And then we have magic tool, which will select areas. So for example, I want that P and I want that S and I want the border. You've got the magic to do that. Now sometimes it works really well, other times it can be quite of a letdown. You have the crop tool and the perspective crop tool and the slice tool, so that's a lot of stuff you can actually as you can see, it does that. Let's spin it round. Oh. Don't crop. We have the eyedrop tool, so if you're ever looking for a colour off something, you can always drop it on, and you have your tool here, which you can switch between primary colour, secondary colour. Some of these I've actually not used myself, so it's something I could probably show you in the future once I've had a little play with them, but to be honest, it's not tools I use an awful lot. Again, this is spot healing tool, heal brush. This is just when you're doing photo editing and stuff. It can help with that, and then you have like red eye removal, so basic tool, and then we have our brush tool, pencil tool, colour replacement tool, mixer brush. Generally I use the brush tool an awful lot. I have a selection of brushes here, not a huge amount, but some I've downloaded, and then you get some of the basic ones which you can use to create some cool things like this in the background, which is the splat, which was just, you know, like that. Very simple. We have the clone stamp tool and the pattern stamp tool. Now clone I do use an awful lot for photo editing. Becomes a very, very used tool. We have history brush, which I don't use, and then we have the erasure tool and magic eraser tool. Now sometimes I do use it. You can use it on layer masks and stuff, which is really good. We have the fill tool, which your standard tool will be that, which is just a normal paint bucket, and then you have a gradient tool, which if you grab it, you create a gradient. We then have the blur tool, sharpen tool, and smudge tool, which you can use a few times again, photo editing. Excuse me. We have a dodge tool, burn tool, and sponge tool. Again, it's not a tool I use. And then we have a pen tool with different various ones. Now the pen tool, if you want more accurate selection, you can actually be more precise. I find it actually more time consuming, but I don't use it. And then we have our text tool, which have the various ways of doing it, and you have more advanced options for your text here as well, and then some other options up here. Again, we won't go through that yet. We have the fast selection tool and direct selection tool. Again, I don't use them. Let's just put that way. And then we have the, if you want to call it, shapes tool. So these the vertex tools. So they're not like your normal. You can actually create your own shapes. You can actually adjust them, the radius. You can actually type numbers in on the right here. You can actually change the size of it, you can change the radius of it, and so forth. We have hand tool, rotate view, and then we have the zoom tool, which is you click that, clicking left will zoom out, holding alt and clicking left again will zoom back out. And then we have our little colour part here, which is you can obviously select your own colours. If you've got a numeric value, you can type it in there for a specific one. Maybe you've got it off a website or not. But anyway, let's get on with the tutorial. That's a kind of quick run through some of the tools. I don't want to go too into it because, again, it's a basic tutorial. So we will close this for now and we will start a new one. So you're always going to go up to File, New, and then it pops up with this screen. Now you can name it whatever you want. So oh, can't spell, tutorial 1. And then you pick your size. You can pick measurements, but generally if you're going to be working with graphics for the web or any kind of YouTube stuff or Twitch stuff, that's pixels. So we're going with 1920 by 1080, which is HD resolution, and then we're going to put resolution to center 2, RGB leave it on that, 8-bit leave it on that, background white, can leave it on that for now. So we'll click OK, and there's our first project. Now when you first start, your background layer is always locked, so you can't touch it. To unlock it, just double click. Obviously you might get that, just ignore it, so it unlocks the actual, and then double click and we'll call it background. So the first thing I'm going to do is a gradient as a filter. So again, I'm not going to go too much into detail on some of these filters or effects, just purely for this tutorial so it doesn't go on too long. So the next one is we're going to create a corner. So we'll just call that corner. And what we're going to get for this is the selection tool. We're going to fill that with black for now. Actually, let's make that a little bit bigger. And then we are going to, first of all, give it a bevel. The thing is with bevel, you can always go way too crazy with it. You have techniques of hard, smooth, and then obviously you have the size. The moment we just want one. But you also have inner, outer, emboss, pillar emboss. It's different techniques which you can experiment with yourself and just see how you get on. But for the time being, we're going to go with that one. I'm going to put this to about 25 and that one to 0 because we don't need that. So the next layer I'm going to do is kind of the little shadow that was coming off here. So we've got new layer here. So what I'm going to do with this one is a little marquee tool. I'm actually going to paint that black. Go to filter, blur, Gaussian blur, and then we'll put that on about 15 possibly. And then we're going to rotate this. Put that up there. Edit transform, free transform. And then we're going to knock that down to about 50 so it's not too intrusive. So we've got a little bit of a shadow there. Okay, doke. So the next layer we are going to do is on top of this one. So I'm going to left click and click that layer so it actually selects that layer. And then on this layer we will get the brush tool. And I actually think I've got the brush selected. Yeah. So on this one I'm just going to change this to white so I can actually see where it is. That's quite an ugly one, that. Let's pick a different one. Let's have that one. That'll do. So there we go. So we've selected that. We're going to double click that layer and we're going to give it a gradient overlay. So we now have our little splat thing in the corner. Let's just call that splat. Now what I'm going to do is this layer here, let's just rename it so we forget, shadow 1. I'm actually going to duplicate this layer and we'll call it shadow 2. And we're going to place it on top of this layer here. Yeah. Step back. Did not mean to do that at all. Do apologise there. Yeah, there we go. And then what I'm going to do is turn up there we go, so that's on about 80. I'm going to select this layer again. I'm going to select this layer, select inverse, and delete. Let's just select that slightly. Let's just modify, contract it by 1. Delete that again, just so I can see my bevel coming through. Excuse me. Okie doke. So we will load up YouTube projects. I have this logo icon for Photoshop, so if I just select all that and if I paste it, I'll move it up to here for now. And I'm also going to colorize it, so if I go to image, adjust hue saturation, and for the time being I'm going to colorize it completely. Now you can change it like that, and you can actually change the saturation as well, but for now I'm going to colorize it. Not the there we go, perfect. And so the next bit is to rename it Photoshop logo. We're going to create some text. So at the moment I've got this font called Bulletproof. There's a few different ones you can pick. I'm just going to pick regular. I'm just going to type tutorial. You know, you can actually scale it through here by typing in number in and adjusting it, or you can actually just do freeform transform, which I do a lot, which is just scale it to the size. You also have a bunch of options here for the text at the top where you can actually have it so it's not anti-aliased. So you've got sharp, you've got crisp, strong, smooth. So we'll keep it on smooth for now. And you can also change the spacing between the text. At the moment you have it as 0, you can make it 100, 200, you can type your own number in, you can make it close together. For now we're going to leave it as 0. And again, if you have multiple lines, again you can do the spacing from top to bottom. But for now we're going to leave it on that. We're going to give it a gradient overlay, which is perfect. I just want to stick to the one that I used previous to that. We're going to get a slight bevel. Not much of one. And I've got the angle at 145. I'm just going to reverse it so it's coming up from that corner. And then we're going to give it some drop shadow. Not too much. Leave it on about 40 for now. And again, we've got the angle at 145. Now, if you want everything to have the same kind of colouring, lighting, angle, you can use global light, which adjusts everything to that, but we'll leave that for now. So we're going to OK that. So what we're going to do is control left click this layer, create a new layer, select modify, contract. I'm going to contract by 2 pixels, so it's slightly inside the text. And then we get the fill tool, right click, go to gradient, make sure you have the colour white selected, and then up here you want it so it's white to transparent. What we're going to do is scroll down so we get that nice little white text. So this is going to be the shine, and then we've got the selection tool, circular one, and then we're going to bring it over, and we're actually going to delete that. And then what we'll do is knock the layer down to about 50%. So that's our little shine there. So we're going to duplicate the text. Actually, let's just rename that. let's just get rid of some of these so it's not too overwhelming. So duplicate this layer. Okay, we'll just call it that for now. We're going to scale it down to about so. Let's just change the gradient, so we will have for the top an off grey, and then for the bottom we will have a white, pure white. We're going to keep everything else the same, I think. Let's just see how much this comes out. Yeah, just nudge that out. Let's just change the text as well, so we're going to call it Photoshop. Duplicate that layer again, and we're going to call it Basics. As you can see, I've got guides that help me keep it lined up. Let's just grab all them. Let's just move them down. Oops, excuse me. Didn't mean to do that. We need the reflection as well. And we'll center it there. And that is pretty much it for this one. So again, we've done some very basic stuff, some basic tool functions. It's just about experimenting with those filters, effects, just what your imagination come with. And hopefully you'll be able to recreate this. Just let me know in the comments what you think of this tutorial, whether it was too long, too short, did I speak too fast, did I not explain enough, and maybe some ideas from other tutorials, because a lot of stuff I will be doing will be based on gaming stuff, because I am a gaming channel, but I would like to help out as many people as possible in regards to Photoshop tutorials, and possibly maybe After Effects and Cinema 4D in the future, but for now it's going to be Photoshop. So I appreciate you all watching, and I will see you all next time.